Hey guys, in this video, I want to talk about one of the simplest and most profitable detailing strategies that I really learned to implement pretty early on in my auto detailing business, and I think it would be of great use to anyone who's beginning in this business, and that is what I kind of term as isolated jobs. So to give you guys an example, as you're looking at this upholstery, we're going to be looking at just upholstery in a few different examples of a few different vehicles in this video. Most of the time I'm going to be extracting, kind of taking extreme measures, but the last set of upholstery you're going to see in a Toyota Tacoma, I actually just addressed very simply, and the reason that is because upholstery represents this thing that I'm terming isolated jobs. And what that is pretty simple. An isolated job is nothing more than one specific part of the vehicle that the customer wants done without having the rest of the part of that vehicle done. Meaning, if they want the interior done or they want the exterior done, they just want one single area of that. So, of course, the upholstery probably explains itself, but again, they don't want the entire interior done. They just want the upholstery. Now, for those of you who are beginning in the auto detailing business, something to note here is that this is actually fairly common. You're going to have people call you and they'll open up the conversation with something like this. Hey Luke, I've got some really bad carpets and I've never really had my car detailed and I'm not really that messy. I don't really want everything done, but my kids in the back get these carpets just disgusting and they're tan. And so what would you charge me just to shampoo my carpets? That's a very, very common way for a customer to open up a conversation. And I think it's worth talking about because this represents an area that you can maximize profits in a very short time period. And I touched on this in a different video, but I want to go into much more detail here. What I mean by maximizing profits is this. While let's take this interior here, this upholstery is really disgusting. It's really it's like terrible. Like this is as bad as it gets here. And so it just makes a good subject for this video. But having said that, this entire interior, I would charge, let's just say $250. That's just a random number. $250 to do this entire interior. However, if the customer calls me and only wants the upholstery done, I am not going to think to myself what I would charge for the entire interior being $250 and then somehow try to figure out what percentage of that $250 represents only the upholstery and then only charge them that amount of money for the upholstery. Because I'm still having to drive out there and drive back just like I would if I was doing the entire vehicle. But also, it's kind of like, say, if you call a pet groomer and you say, listen, I've got a puppy, how much do you charge to groom the puppy? And they say, well, we start at $80 for puppies, and then when he's an adult, we're going to charge you $100 to, shave his hair. Well, you think to yourself, why would you charge me $80 to do a tiny little dog and then only $100, $20 more to do an adult dog? There's a big size difference. There's kind of a large disparity between these jobs. Why are you starting at $80? Well, it's because this isn't a linear progression. This isn't if you looked at a graph, it doesn't go up step by step. In other words, if I take my puppy to the groomer, they're still going to have to pull out the clippers. They're still going to have to get someone to actually do it. They're staffing their place. They've got all these expensive they're paying for. And so you're not starting at $50 because, well, the size of the dog is significantly smaller. You're charging based on the fact that you're going to have to pull out your supplies, get there, get the dog back, all of that sort of stuff. And it's the same kind of thought process here in the detailing world when you're dealing with isolated jobs where you're not having to do an entire interior detail. So to come back to this real life scenario, while I might charge $250 to do the entire interior here, I'd charge somewhere around $150 to do this upholstery because number one, it's really dirty upholstery and it's going to take a pretty good amount of time. I mean, obviously, I could probably get this done in an hour or less, but once again, it's still really dirty. I'm going to have to pull out a lot of products, going to have to pull out my machine, going to have to go there, going to have to come back. So there's certain variables that are staying the same throughout as if I were doing the entire interior, even though I'm only addressing the seats. And this is where a great opportunity lies in the detailing world, especially when you're beginning, just because This doesn't take a lot of time, so not only are you maximizing profits just in an hourly wage sort of sense, but it also doesn't take as nearly as much energy, right? If I were doing the entire interior, you reach this point of really wishing the job was over just because it takes so much energy out of you, whereas this is something where you stay pretty alert and focused the entire time. So it's just a great way to kind of wade into detailing, more or less. On top of all of that, customers understand this. This is not going to be an area where you're going to find that customers are challenging you and saying, well, why would you charge me that much? Or, they're not going in their heads thinking, well, how much do you charge to do the whole interior? Well, why are you charging X amount of dollars to do this? This is one of those things where it's like taking your dog to the groomer, or, it's like going and getting your hair cut. It's like my wife has a lot more hair than I have, but her haircut doesn't exactly cost a lot more than mine does, simply because it's going to start at a certain level based on the fact that the person is having to pull out the scissors, pull out the supplies, do the job, they're staffing people, all of that sort of stuff. This isn't we're not taking a fraction of what you would have charged if you were doing the entire interior. You're taking this, like I have kind of coined it, as an isolated incident, an isolated situation, an isolated job, and charging based off of those facts. Now, having said that, of course, this is a fantastic way to seriously raise your hourly payment or hourly wage, simply because if I can get this done in, let's just say, an hour, just because I know that this kind of upholstery could be done very, very well at a very high level within an hour, and you're charging $150, and we can just round it up and say an hour and a half based on how much time it takes you to get there and back. That is, serious money. You're talking well in excess of $100 an hour in order to do a job like this. And not to mention, it's a fantastic place where you can start adding value to the customer because you're charging them, because you're making, let me put it like this, because you're making such a large amount of money per hour, and it doesn't take very long for you to accomplish a job like that, it's really easy to add in some add-ons here that you're not charging your customer for, just as a sort of, hey, thank you for the opportunity. So for example, one of the things that I would do in an instance like this, if I was just dealing with the upholstery, is I would go ahead and protect all of the upholstery, waterproof all of the upholstery with something like Scotch Guard protection, or something even better, G-Technic Smart Fabric, which will literally waterproof any fabric that it touches. And so that is just a fantastic add-on you can go ahead and do because you're spending such little time already. Something else, you can go ahead and vacuum out very lightly the floor mats and the floorboard of the car carpet. That's something that's not going to take a lot of time, and while the customer isn't paying for it, you can weigh some of those things based on some of your experience of how quick you are at doing certain things, and say, hey, this is only going to add 15 minutes to my job here, but it's going to add a serious value add to my customer. Like, they're going to really remember the fact that I did this, and so this is something I'll go ahead and invest the time in doing because I know it's going to pay dividends in the future. Now, having said all of that, it probably is pretty intuitive understanding why this would be something that maximizes your profits in your business. In a lot of ways, this can be considered a specialty service like, say, headlight restoration, engine detailing, those sort of things. Those areas that we consider quote-unquote specialty detailing services, where in many ways people will call to only get that thing done. I think if you're thinking creatively, once again, in your detailing business, which is essential to continue to grow, is thinking outside the box and doing things other detailers aren't doing, you can take some of these things and sort of add them in as quote-unquote specialty services. And what ends up happening as you get better communicating with your customers is you can kind of hear between the lines. That's probably, you can't say the saying that way. I know it's read between the lines, but you can kind of hear between the lines of what the customer is saying and how they're saying it. And I can't tell you how many countless situations I have had where customers have called me, and based on how they were describing the condition of their car, what they were wanting, all of that sort of stuff, I would come to a certain conclusion and say, well, you know what, how about we do this? In many ways, I can hear in a customer's voice what they're wanting to pay, and based on how the conversation has gone up to a certain point, you can kind of tell if this person is going to be somebody who wants to pay the high price for the whole job to be done, or if they just might settle for like one of these isolated jobs. So in many cases, if I get that sense, I will say something like this. Well, listen, Based on what you're saying, it sounds like really what you're concerned about in this van is the carpets and the seats, and really particularly the carpets in the back seat where your kids are, and the leather seats in the back seat where your kids are. We can take those car seats out, get all of that leather stripped and protected. Go ahead, vacuum all of your carpets, make sure we steam clean them and extract them if we need to. And this is going to take care of the majority of your car. And to be honest with you, just from my experience, the upholstery or the leather seats and the upholstery or car carpets, that is the main area or visual aspect of a car that when that is cleaned, even when nothing else is touched, it really makes a difference just from a first, glance point of view, but also just when you're driving. Even though we didn't detail the hard plastics and the hard rubber vinyl, dashboard, steering wheel, all the other areas, that major part being done makes a big difference. And so why don't we do this? Let's look at just getting that done. I'll price you for that, and we can go from there. And in a lot of ways, when you get on the customer's level in that way, you kind of come off the mountain and say, listen, this is kind of what it sounds like you're wanting, and from my experience, I can tell you this is kind of what it's going to turn out like, and it sounds like how it's going to turn out does match what you're wanting anyways. Why don't we just do that? That is something people go for time and time again. It's a fantastic way to just create a win-win for you and your customer in that way. Now, as I'm kind of talking about this business stuff, I want to let you guys know a couple of the products that I use when I'm detailing upholstery, just so you know. Obviously, I pretty much always use my drill brushes when I'm detailing upholstery. Now, I will say, for those of you looking to get these drill brushes on Amazon actually lost my inventory, which was super frustrating. And because they're a gigantic corporation, I can't exactly just call them on the phone. So unfortunately, Amazon only received 90 units of my drill brush inventory. So all of those 90 sold very quickly. And so I am now out of stock again. However, just to update you guys, I do have the new and improved drill brush set. There's only a limited amount of them. I ordered kind of a test run this first time. Finally, when we got manufacturing done, it took a while to get all the testing done and make sure the quality was up to par and everything was figured out on that. So for those of you wondering about that, those should be over here and hitting the US border here very soon. And when those are in stock, I will let you know. But for now, there are other options that are much less quality and not quite as geared for detailing on Amazon, but other drill brushes do exist. I always use my white soft stiffness drill brush when I'm dealing with car upholstery, just because it makes the scrubbing process so easy and ultimately just extremely effective. And so it's a no-brainer. It's like there's no reason not to have that. Of course, that comes with the power drill. Then with the microfiber towels, again, for the interior, I really stick with the Members Mark or the Sam's Club kind of generic brand microfiber towels. They're really great interior towels. I do not use them on the exterior, but they work fantastically, especially for carpet and upholstery. Now, as far as products go, there's a kind of this never-ending debate of, do you use all-purpose cleaner and degreaser, like these kind of classic cleaners, to do upholstery, or do you use dedicated upholstery cleaners? And without going into too much detail, the answer is both. The general rule of thumb that I use here is when I'm dealing with really disgusting upholstery and it's really in bad condition and I want a lot of suds, and for other reasons that I won't get into, I use dedicated upholstery cleaners, generally speaking. When they're cleaner, I will reach for my APC. I'll leave it at that for now. Then, of course, I most of the time implement my extractor when they're really dirty and it calls for it. This is the Mighty Light 8070. It's a heated carpet extractor. For those of you looking for a less expensive extractor, there is an extractor called the Aqua Pro Vac, which is what I suggest for anybody who's on a bit of a budget. I believe it's $4.99 or $3.99. I believe it was $3.99 a couple years ago. They might have raised it to $4.99. But the Mighty Light that I'm using here, that is a heated extractor. Of course, yes, heat is going to yield better results in most situations, but that is not always called for, especially if you have a steamer. So that Aqua Pro Vac that sits at that $4.99 price point can be a lot better for some people. The Mighty Light site sits at about an $1,100 price point. And yes, you can tell a difference, of course, but once again, that cheaper version, that less expensive version is absolutely very effective when combined with the right tools and products. And I used it for a couple years, just a couple years ago in my detailing business. Other than that, guys, that is really as simple as it can be, but I would encourage you to start practicing listening in between the lines with your customers, because you will be able to create these awesome win-win situations. One other thing to address, people kind of ask endlessly, is it dangerous to introduce too much liquid to the upholstery? Is that going to hurt something? The easiest way I can answer this question is just simply, the new car upholstery that manufacturers are using tends to be a little bit more difficult to deal with. It's kind of a very thin, stretched fabric as opposed to that traditional fibers that stick up, sort of fabric like traditional carpeting. That type of fabric can be a little bit more difficult to deal with when you're extracting, because that introduction of the liquid sometimes wicks up, and that wicking is basically best described as when the seat dries, the liquid underneath, kind of in that foam interface under the seat, wicks up, or it kind of resurfaces, and you see almost a ring around the upholstery, around the seat, where it almost looks like something. It's the same appearance as when you kind of get sweaty and sit down in the seat and your sweat seeps into the seat. It creates this sort of like sweat ring, like of salt kind of. That's what it looks like. The best way to avoid this is to take around 2 super dry microfiber towels with you anytime you're doing one particular seat. Make sure that anytime your microfiber towel gets even a little overly damp, you switch and you use a completely dry microfiber towel. On top of that, when you're extracting this kind of newer material that ends up wicking a little bit more frustratingly, if that's a word, try to extract the entire surface, meaning don't just extract one spot. In many ways, that will create this ring, and without going into too much detail why, in some ways you kind of spread the stain around if it's loose, and it'll spread into kind of a big ring instead of just staying into that one spot. So my best suggestion for you is kind of like when you're doing a polishing job or you're doing a scratch removal, you want to make sure that you actually wet sand a much larger surface than just where the scratch is. That way you level that entire playing field so there's no shadows that end up being cast, or there's no obvious, what would I say, guys? Shadow is actually the best way to describe it. You want to wet sand a larger area so you make sure that it kind of blends together rather than that small little area obviously being corrected. It's the same way with upholstery when you're wanting to avoid wicking. Number one, make sure you have an abundance of totally dry microfiber towels. And number two, if the upholstery has a specific stain that's pretty bad that you're trying to address, just go ahead and address that larger surface area. That way, if it does begin to wick, you've still addressed that larger area so that you will actually pick up that ring that ends up wicking outward. Hopefully that makes sense. If you've ever experienced it, you know what I'm talking about. It can be very frustrating. Guys, if you want to check out any of the tools or the products used in this video, and I will hook them up below in the YouTube description box. There'll be Amazon links. They're affiliate links. So yes, I do get a commission for anything you guys buy on there. Very small commission, I might add, but a little by little is good nonetheless. And I will also kind of describe what those products are based on what I described in this video, meaning is it just an all-purpose cleaner, or is it a dedicated carpet shampoo, upholstery shampoo, and why I suggest buying it. And of course, I'll hook up the drill brushes, the power drill, the Mighty Light extractor, also that less expensive extractor, and also probably my favorite steamer for auto detailers as well. Guys, stick around till the end so you can see the rest of this detail. But as always, if you are new to the Wilson Auto Detailing community and you haven't yet hit the subscribe button, but you like information like this, then hit the subscribe button and tap the bell icon so that you get notified when I publish any future videos. If you like this info, do me a favor right now and hit the like button so that I know you liked it and I can put out more videos like this. And as always, guys, thanks for watching, and from Luke here at Wilson Auto Detailing, keep working hard, and I will see you guys in the next video.